Have you ever been offended? And I mean, I said this in the last service. I said, you don't need to tell me, but I think I know the answer. And if you will, if you'll imagine for me, think back to the last time that you were offended, if you can. Some of you might be easier because it was just 20 minutes ago on your way to church. Maybe some of you have to look back a little bit and you say, you know what, for my 15th birthday, I was offended that I got vanilla instead of chocolate. Yeah, I was offended that I got coal. I thought I was good that year for Christmas. You weren't. But we get offended. Someone says something that offends us. Something happens that offends us. Someone does something that offends us. We live in an offensive world. Can we agree on that? It's pretty, if you're offended by that, I'm sorry. I'm kidding. I'm not going to just make offending puns all service, I swear. Anything and everything can offend us. And it's all around. It's so much more easy to be offended nowadays. You wake up, and a lot of people, their first instinct is they wake up and, maybe their phone is their alarm. Their alarm's going off. They turn off their alarm, and then they look at their phone. They go on their phone. They open Facebook, Instagram. Do people actually use Threads? We tried, but I don't know. Twitter, X, whatever. And they go onto the social platforms because they want to see what happened on the other side of the world while I was asleep. Well, it was daytime for them. What happened over here during the night? What new thing has occurred during my slumber? And a lot of times we can get offended before we even put our feet on the floor in the morning. And that's just normal at this point. A lot of times that is just how the world works. Everywhere you look, you could have drove here this morning to church and you saw a billboard and you said, I'm offended by the words that they said there. I'm offended by the lack of clothes that are on that person, or too much clothes. I don't know, but something got to you that left you with a feeling of bitterness and resentment, a little bit of anger, something within you where you just didn't feel right. Now you're just focused on that thing. Even right now, you might be focused on it. Maybe you came in here offended by something and you said, I don't know if I'm going to get anything from the message today. I hope you do. I hope we can put that aside for a moment and we can learn about what it means to be unoffendable. Say that with me, unoffendable. Sounds like a superhero, actually. Unoffendable. I want to tell you a story. I've heard this story told a few times. I come across it on social media and through different outlets, but it's a parable that you can interchange the characters, where they are, who they are, but the overall message I find is usually the same. So bear with me. A businessman walks into a diner, and I'm not going to tell a joke here. I just want to make you aware. This isn't a setup for a bad joke. A businessman walks into a diner. Now it's a Thursday, and this businessman, he works in business, corporate America, and he is stressed because he deals with people, he deals with numbers, he has to wear a suit all day. It's just how it is. But it's a Thursday. It's a particularly difficult Thursday for businessman. And businessman thinks to himself during his lunch break, he says, I'm going to go to my favorite diner and I'm going to order myself a plate of delicious, salty fries. Where are my salt fans at? Any salt fans who prefer the salt to sweet? Now, it took me a long time to come to terms with that with myself, a lot of soul searching, but I am confident with saying that I would prefer a salty snack than a sweet treat. Sometimes a plate of nachos hits better than a scoop of ice cream. The jalapeno Cheetos hit better than an ice cream sandwich sometimes, but I'm a fan of salt myself, and this guy was too. Nothing was going to reset his day like a plate of French fries. This diner had good fries too. Those good fries you're thinking about, that's exactly how they were. Yep. He was going to get a whole plate of those. He didn't care. It was his cheat day, just like every day. And so he goes in, and it's particularly busy this day. Not a seat in the house, except in the back corner, right by the jukebox, is one empty booth. And it was one of those classic retro booths with, the out-round padding on the back, red, white. It was a classic diner. That's why he loved it, really. He really loved this diner. And so he sat down. Waitress comes over, and he orders himself his plate of fries. She says, absolutely. He knows the service is quick, so this shouldn't be too long. And she says, we'll have that right out. So the man's sitting there, just thinking about all the things that are going on, the day that has been, Joe from finance is over, all yapping in his ear about all this stuff, how he's spending against the budget, all that stuff, and he's just like, you know what, I just need to relax. He was letting it all fester and whirl around in his head, and then all of a sudden, across from him sits down a stranger. Never seen this guy before in his life. Never seen him. Sits down across from him, doesn't even really make eye contact, picks up a paper that was sitting on the bar, and he opens it. And he hides himself behind the Daily News. And this guy, the businessman, sitting there, and he's thinking, at first he's kind of confused. He says, what's this guy do? Do I know this guy? He's trying to look. He can't see the guy's face. I don't know who this guy is. So he's trying not to let this bug him, but he looks around. He thinks maybe he's just, he doesn't have a seat. And whatever. As long as the guy just doesn't talk to me, I don't really care. As long as I get my fries and I can be on my way, it'll be a good day. So whatever. He goes back to thinking about Joe and finance and all that. And then the plate of fries arrives. It's put down right between the two gentlemen. She says, enjoy, and walks away. And he has his first crispy bite. Salty bliss. It's fantastic. All of his problems melt away until the man from behind the paper reaches around, grabs one, goes back around his paper, and you just hear, that's how good they were. That's what it sounded like when he ate them. And this guy's like, wait a minute, hang on. Did this guy I must be dreaming. I must be asleep right now, and I am dreaming, and I'm having a nightmare, and I need to wake up, because I could have swore I had my delicious plate of fries in front of me, and I paid for them, and I ordered them. I haven't paid for them yet, because that's not how it works, but I've ordered them, and then this guy sits down, opens the paper, doesn't even say hello, by the way, and then he takes one of my fries without asking. I probably wouldn't have said yes, but, come on. So he's thinking, I must be losing it, It can't be, whatever, I'll just move on. So he goes and he has another one. The man reaches back around, grabs one. I can't believe this, he says. I can't. Businessman is he is appalled. He is flabbergasted. He is a lot of big words. He's so just wondering what is going on. And he's starting to get a little angry at this guy. He's thinking, this guy, he comes in here and he's starting to eat my food. I'm going to end up paying for it. I bet you this guy isn't even going to offer to pay for it. But you know what I'll do? I'll just eat more. So he grabs two and he eats them quickly. Paperman takes one. He's thinking, oh boy, this is it. Oh boy. In his mind, he's really ramping himself up. He would never say anything out loud, though. But he grabs three this time, eats them. Paperman, one. And he's trying to compose himself. But he's kept in an office all day. We're in a cubicle where he has to keep typing away, and he's really feeling like losing it. And so he goes back and forth. This goes on for most of his lunch break. 2 fries, 1. 3 fries, 1. 2 fries, 1. 5 fries. Can you believe it? 1. This is a big plate, too. And so finally he gets down to the last French fry sitting on that plate between them. And he says, I got it. He snatched that thing up so fast, he ate it, and he was saying, yes, in his mind, I am victorious. I got the last laugh. I got the last fry. I'm better than you. He didn't say that. He didn't say any of that. It was just all in his mind. He was just so bitter towards this guy. He's like, finally, if anything, I get the last laugh. And not a moment passes, then the waitress comes by, sets a plate of fries in front of him specifically and says, sorry about the delay, sir. Our fryer was broken. She picks up the plate, looks at the gentleman behind the newspaper and says, can I take this for you, sir? To which he said, yes, please. And he's sitting there, the businessman is sitting there, still the paper guy is nowhere to be seen behind this paper, and the businessman's sitting there thinking, what have I done? Why did he not say anything? Why did he stop me? Now I look like the fool. Oh man, now I ate all this guy's fries, and now am I going to have to pay for it? And he just starts breaking down. He's angry at the guy for not saying anything. He's angry at himself for doing that, for just assuming that it was his fries. And then he's just feeling foolish. He's like, what a dumb mistake I made. And this honestly ruined his day. Ruined his day. Not a happy ending. Anyway, you ever been offended? Yeah. This guy was offended by the fact that this man would sit down, just start eating his food. And understandable, but what a misunderstanding that leaves him feeling very silly, very foolish, very fast. Offensiveness is not new. It's not some new craze and some new thing that's going around the world. It's always been here. It's just more accessible now. Like I mentioned, the phones we pick up, the news that we watch, the newspapers that we read. Anyone read newspapers? Anyone? Oh. Okay. Digital newspapers? Not even? Okay, well. Crosswords? All right. Everywhere you go, you could be offended. And it is more accessible than ever. Now, you say, well, surely it has not been around forever. Surely it had to start somewhere, but I would challenge you, and we can even see examples of offensiveness, and I use that term loosely because we're kind of playing around, we're kind of joking around with this. But in Scripture, I have a couple of examples I want to read to you, and I want you to pretend that you are on the receiving end of what is said, okay? I want you to pretend that the characters who are speaking these words are talking directly to you, and I want you to think if you would be offended by these or not. Our first example is Jesus. In Matthew 15, 21 to 28, we read that Jesus went away from where he was and withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and was crying. She was crying, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon." But he did not answer her a word. See, like on first read, you think, oh, that's kind of uncharacteristic of Jesus, but all right, we'll see. We'll read on. We have to read on. His disciples came to him begging, saying, "Send her away. She is crying out after us." And Jesus answered to them. He said, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Interesting. All right, so Jesus played favorites. Let's see how this plays out. With all things, we have to, because that's a part that could easily, you have these debates. There's those students and professors that have debates on social media, and a lot of them, they take it right out of context. And that's easy one that someone could say, Jesus said, "I'm only here to deliver those from Israel, that I'm only here for the Jews." And it's like, okay, well, there's a thing called context. Let's read before, and let's see what happens next, right? It's important. So what happens next? Well, the woman's not giving up. She comes kneeling before him saying, "Lord, help me." And he answered, "It is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." Now remember, imagine you're that woman. It's not good to take the bread and throw it to the dogs. What is he calling her? You can answer. A dog, yeah. Right? I would have been like, Jesus, why are you doing that? Why are you saying that? I didn't do nothing to you, man. Maybe shed a tear a little bit. But she persists. She says, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire." And her daughter was healed instantly. Instantly. Okay, so we watched that play out. We saw how that went. Now let's go over really quick to a fellow by the name of Paul. We know Paul, right? And if I said, hey, Paul said something that someone would find offensive, you'd probably actually, if you read the letters, you'd be like, I can see that. Yeah, he's kind of a quick, sharp-tongued fella. He'd probably send out a scathing letter that a few people found offense to. Let's look at this. In Titus, he's writing to Titus 1, 12 to 13. Now he's referring to here, just a little context, he's referring to a person who has said something about a group of people, and then he expands on it, okay? So, one of the Cretans, a prophet of their own, said, "Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons." To which Paul says, "This testimony is true." Nailed it right on the head. "Therefore rebuke them sharply, that they may be sound in the faith." So, we have two scriptures there that on their own you look at it, you're like, whoa, we got some sarcasm flowing right now. Like we got some things happening. We got Jesus calling people dogs. We got Paul saying, yep, they are, I don't want to add anything to this injury. They're liars, they're evil, they're gluttons. That's 3 insults right there, packaged into one letter, and Paul's just throwing that out there. Why are we being so offensive? And are these people getting offended? Or is there a greater meaning to these passages? We look, and as we examine the context, the before and the after of Jesus' encounter, Jesus was testing that woman. Jesus was putting it so that he said, let's see, if I treat her like this, which she's probably used to, because a Jew interacting with a woman from where she was from would have probably been a normal encounter, really. And so he was putting the ball in her court. He says, you basically have to say either, I do in fact believe you are who you are, because she said son of David, so she knows who he is, or I'm going to say, you know what, I'm offended, take a step back, I'm going to see if a town magician can help me otherwise, right? Because they had those back then. Wasn't as effective. But he left the ball in her court. What are you going to do? And she passed with flying colors. She says, Lord, I understand who you are, and even the dog, even myself, will take the crumbs. And he was amazed by her faith and rewarded. She was rewarded for that. So it was a test. Second, we see with Paul. Paul was actually, it wasn't intended to belittle or degrade anyone, but it was seen, it was a well-known fact if a Cretan prophet was even saying, hey, my people stink. Not literally, maybe. I don't know what the shower situation was. But in terms of us as people, we're not great. We're all liars. We eat way too much. We're evil down to the core at the end of the day. So what Paul is saying, he's warning Titus. He says, Titus, listen, this is who we're going to be dealing with here. Okay, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If you go to these people, if you go to the Cretans, don't expect to show up and them have really decency to understand where you're coming from. They're not going to meet you, so you got to understand that they're going to have a hard shell. You got to meet them where they are. You got to break through that. So he was preparing him by stating something that was an already well-known fact. So not intended to be offensive, but funny all the same if you read about it and you say, oh, good one, Paul. You see, we can all agree that the world is an offensive place. But what I want to challenge you today is to become unoffendable. There's that word again. Say it with me. Unoffendable. Now, if you look in the dictionary, you're not going to find it because it's made up. But it's fine because it proves a point. I listened to a podcast, a couple of gentlemen who at the beginning, they're in pastoral roles and church roles. And at the beginning of the year, they went over some of the best values to have. And I made note, I'm like, all right, where can we improve? Where can I improve as not only a pastor, but as a father, a husband, just a son, a person in general? We can always improve. So one of the things, they were going through their values, and one of the values was be unoffendable. Be unoffendable. And it was rooted in Proverbs 19:11. It says this, good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. So a good value is to be unoffendable. Not allow anything to offend you, but it is kind of a double-edged sword, a two-parter. Because while being unoffendable means you do not get offended, doesn't mean put up a hard shell. It also means that you are not offending. Offended, offending. And we're going to look at about what it means and how do we achieve being unoffendable. And I have 4 main points, 4 ideas, 4 things that we can implement into our own lives to become closer to unoffendable. First thing is this: Christians are not to give offense. Make sense? Do our best to not offend folks. Okay, all right. Number 2, Christians may have and have indeed lost sight of what offense means and does. We know what it means to be offended, but what does offense mean? We're going to look at that. Number 3, Christians should lead people to Christ and not drive them away. I think can I get an amen for that one? We're not aiming to drive people away. We want these seats full and the seats in heaven fuller, right? Good? We're all on the same page. And number 4, no matter what we do, we will offend people. Hold on. You might be saying, Pastor Colt, I was listening with my listening ears. And at the beginning, you said, do not offend people. And now you're saying we will offend people. How does that work? Well, it does. And I'm going to explain it to you. It's paradox. It shouldn't work. It might work. It does. We'll get to it. We're going to explain these a little bit better here. So going back, point 1, Christians are not to give offense. Where do we find that? We are directed in 1 Corinthians 10, 32, 33. This is Paul talking. Give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved. So what do we notice from this instructions here? Well, it's Paul writing another one of his letters, church in Corinth, right? And he says, don't offend, and he lists a couple of groups of people. Jews, Greeks, don't offend the church. He's basically saying, do what I do. Now, he says, the reason I do what I do, he says, the reason I try to, and he's not saying he's a people pleaser, but the reason he tries to do what he does, please folks, is for the betterment of not himself, but more, everyone. So when you think back and you say the scathing letters, when Paul is saying all these things about people, and it's like, hey, don't do this, don't do that. Is he doing that because he wants to be a big, powerful leader and he wants to, drive them down and belittle them? No. He's doing it for the betterment and the good of all. He wants to bring as many people back to Christ, not for his own glory, but so that God has all of his children running back. That is the goal. We want to bring people to Christ. I'm getting too ahead of myself. That's point 3. We still have another one to go. But don't give offense. Number 2, Christians may have lost sight of what offense means and does. Now I'm going to hit you with a definition and a pronunciation of a Greek word that I didn't butcher in the first service, but it will sound more Italian the more I say it. Scandalizio. See the little lizio, right? That gets the Italian there. Scandalizio. And so the word offense actually derives from this term, scandalizio. And scandalizio, when you define it, when you break it down and you look at what it actually means, so it's a verb, so it's an action, right? And it means to put a stumbling block in the way upon which another may trip and fall, to offend. So it's an action to put a stumbling block in front of someone, to go out of your way, to place something in front of someone that they will trip on, that they will stumble upon, that will interfere with their life in some way. Scandalizio. As we go on, a couple more kind of sub-definitions. To entice to sin. To cause a person to begin to distrust and desert one whom he ought to trust and obey. To cause to fall away. And to cause one to judge unfavorably or unjustly of another. So when we look at offense in this sense, not as I'm mad at that person for saying something, but when we look at offense as if it's a trap, picture a bear trap, with the big claws, like from a cartoon. I always think of Fox and the Hound, right? Kind of traumatized me as a kid, but it's still a good movie. But you look back at that and having all kinds of those bear traps, that's what that is. That's what offense is. When we are offensive and we are offending and offended, it's a trap that we can get caught in, and that's where we're going to stay. And it goes both ways. When we offend someone, we are trapping them. We're tossing that trap right under their foot. They ain't going nowhere, right? But it's a two-way street, because when you are on the offending way, you are actually trapping yourself to stay right where you are, to be offensive, to be not doing much good, and that is where you remain until you break that cycle. It's weird to think about offense like a trap. It's weird to think about a bear trap, in 2024 church, but it's something we have to remember. It will ensnare us and be very difficult to get out. Number 3, Christians should lead people to Christ, not drive them away. Right? Okay. Now, we look at Matthew, And it gives us kind of an example of how we're instructed to, when there's someone who's stumbling, someone who is sinning, how do we handle that? How do we do it? Because sometimes our instinct, and think about it if you will, our instinct, someone sinned, and you go, I'm separating myself from that whole situation. Oh, you used to do this when you were in high school? Okay, well, you can cancel that dinner date for Friday, please. And that's it. Some of us do just that, where we find out the imperfections and the flaws of someone, and we say we got to distance ourselves. I can't be associated. But how does it feel when that's us and someone distances themselves from us? So we are instructed on how to handle this when a person is in sin and they are struggling. How do we approach it? How do we lead them to Christ? Matthew 18:15-17. If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. You might have heard this one. It's a familiar passage. If he listens to you, you have gained your brother. Well, there you go. Step one. If he listens to you, you're good. We're done. Fantastic. But if he does not listen, take one or two others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell the church. And if he refuses to listen to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile or a tax collector. So basically it's saying you got 3 strikes and you're out, right? However, you look at this in a different way. It's very similar to when Jesus was asked, what happens if someone, how many times do I have to forgive someone? Now, if you go by VeggieTale math, it was 490. 7 times 7, 70 times 7, it goes back and forth. But the point of the number is you can't forgive that person enough, basically. You should not be keeping track of forgiving that person, and you cannot forgive that person enough that you should ever reach that number. So what this is more so saying is, hey, listen, we're going to go through the process here. I'm going to talk to you, right? You're sinning. We got to talk this out. You're continuing to sin. We got to talk this out. They say, you know what? I don't care. I don't want to listen to you. Fantastic. Not fantastic, but okay. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to get my 2 friends here that also go to the church, that also are involved with this person. They say, hey, listen, this person's struggling with this. We got to talk to them. We come back. We reconvene, and we say, hey, listen, we're all feeling this way, right? You got to figure this out. You can't be doing that anymore. And they say, you know what? I can't be bothered. You get the entire church involved. And the lengths we're going to at that point, getting the entire church involved, we say, please, plead with these people. Please come back, see the error of your ways. But there does reach a time when the pushback and the I don't want your help reaches a point where you say, there's no more I can do other than I will continue to pray for you, and I hope God intercedes in this matter. And that's all we can do. But did you see the lengths that we went to reach this person? We didn't just stop and say, you're sinning. You're done for, right? We ran after him. Just like I would hope that anyone would run after me if that was me in that case. When I inevitably reach that point, we all sin, and I hope someone comes after me and cares enough about me in that instance. So keep on leading people to Christ. Don't drive them away. Keep running after them. Number 4, and this is the paradox. No matter what we do, we will offend people. It's how it's going to be. Now you might say, well, how can I not be offensive and I will offend people? Well, this is kind of a gracious point to say, listen, do your best. Don't go out of your way to offend people. Don't go crazy and start hurling insults at people, obviously. But know that at the end of the day, your faith itself will be offensive to people. The things that you do, the way that you live your life will be offensive to people. And there's not a thing you can do to change that. There's not a thing that I can do to make someone's opinion of me different, that they're not offended by me, that they're not angry by me. All I can do is, if I am in the wrong, stop it. But in this case, this is my faith. I'm going through these. I'm not being offensive. I understand that it's a trap. And I understand I got to try to lead people to Christ. All 3 of those boxes are ticked, and I'm still offending people. That's out of my hands. We look back in Matthew 15, verse 12, when the disciples came and said to him, to Jesus, do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this saying? It goes to show you, again, no matter who you are, no matter what you do, Jesus is out here preaching the truth and the gospel, they're still offended. So if you are going out and you are going about it in the right way, where you are spreading the word and you are checking those boxes and people are still being offended, that is on them. That's on them. There's not much you can do other than continue to pray and that God intervenes there. But it's kind of it's a don't worry. You tried here, you're doing good, but regardless of what you do, some people will still be offended. So don't lose hope. Don't say, that's it, I have to quit. I've fallen apart, I've failed. People will be offended. And how we handle certain offensive and offending situations can make or break how the rest of our life and the rest of someone else's life works. You ever try to repair a broken or damaged relationship? It's not easy. It's definitely not fun. You just want to get to the end. You say, I just hope that all the healing happens. But all this in-between stuff, man, this is like pulling teeth and trying to figure it out and making sure I don't say anything wrong or anything to further offend, right? There's a proverb about this. A brother offended is more unyielding than a strong city, and quarreling is like the bars of a castle. You ever siege a castle lately? No, but Monty Python would have me believe it is very difficult. And a variety of other medieval themed movies that I have seen, Lord of the Rings, it doesn't look easy unless you find the sewage pipe, apparently. But regardless, the things you do now can affect how the long term looks. That said, what I mean is the cautions you take now and the times you hold your tongue and the times you work right now to preserve a relationship will mean less work later on. Because once you make the decision, once you react in a certain way, and that damage is done, you got a bridge you have to repair. Why break the bridge in the first place? So I would encourage you to think about that. Every time you have an interaction, every time you have a thought where this could be bad, what is the worst case scenario that could happen here? Let that be a guide for how you react. Do I react with emotion? Or do I react with what the Bible teaches me to hold my tongue? We read about that in Proverbs. Where'd it go? I had it. Proverbs 21:23. Whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. I'd like to keep out of trouble. I have a hard time guarding my tongue, though, sometimes. Everyone who knows me will attest to it. So I got to work on that. We all need to work on that. Now, if all of this is said and done, and I've spoken to you about all these points, point 1 through 4, and I even snuck in we went over that, and you say, all right, we're good. I've got it all covered. Fantastic. Guess what? I have a sneaky 5th point for you. I had it up my sleeve this whole time. You didn't even see it, because there is a 5th point. So, one more little task to keep you busy, and that's this. The sin in our lives is offensive to God. Now, the goal of these 4 points was to say, all right, here's some steps I can take to lead an unoffendable life. Because that's the goal right now, what we're talking about, lead an unoffendable life. How do I become unoffendable, unoffending? How do we reach that? Checkbox 1 through 4, fantastic. Does it end? No. Because as long as we are living and sinning, we are not unoffending. Not that we're not offending people, but we're offending God. So as soon as you start feeling really good about yourself, let that humble you a little bit and say, no, you've got some work to do. We read about this in Isaiah 59, verse 2. But your iniquities have made a separation between you and your God, and your sins have hidden his face from you so that he does not hear. Now that's basically just saying, listen, as long as you keep on sinning, as long as we remain imperfect, which, how many perfect people in here? Good. Perfect people are a myth. They don't exist, right? And as long as we continue to be imperfect, we have something to strive for. We have our 4 points, our way that we are interacting with the world around us. And when we feel like we've got that all accounted for and all under control, we still have to remember that there's that relationship between us and God where our sin offends him. So we have a little bit of work to do there. It's something we might never complete, but it should keep us busy until eternity. So to recap, we got 4 things that we can apply to our lives on how to lead an unoffendable life. First, guard your tongue, going back to that Proverbs. Guard your tongue. Don't speak without thinking about it first. And even when you thought about it, think about it a little more. Then speak. Number 2, don't let offense trap you. Don't let it be a trap, and don't trap others. Every time you think about offensiveness, think of that bear trap and how unpleasant it would be to be in one of those. Treat it as such. Number 3, lead people to Christ always in everything we do. You wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you get ready to go about your day. The thing I'm about to do, does it bring people to Christ? Maybe. Maybe not. Does it push people away? If so, do not. Be mindful about that. Lead people to Christ in every way you can. And fourth, remember, when all else fails, when all of that comes crumbling down, and you think you've got it, and all of a sudden you're like, but people are still offended, people will be offended regardless. So what does it mean to be offendable? Being offendable means forfeiting the right to be offended. Forfeiting the right to be offended. We all have the right to be offended. We all have the right to think one thing, and we all have the right to do what we want to do. This is about forfeiting that right to be the bigger person, to say, in this instance, I have every right to be offended by what that person just said. And I want to make a remark about the sweater they're wearing. However, though it might be your right, forfeit your right for the good of the relationship, for the good of how you appear as a Christian to that person, because a lot of damage can be done if you start acting out of emotion and people start thinking, man, those emotional Christians are all offensive, angry, mean. I don't want nothing to do with them. Because if we have someone where we're not thinking of that, and we're just quick to act, we're just out of emotion and just boom, 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 anger, and that person is pushed away from Christ, that's on you. That's on me. That's on us. That's a soul. That's a person that we are called to bring to him. Forfeiting our right to be offended, forfeiting our right to hold anger, because the cross offers a reminder of Jesus' willingness to pay the bill, and it's an indictment on us when we are unwilling to do the same for others. Because Jesus died for us, so we can at least act like it. Right? He died for us. Let's act like it. Would you stand with me as we close this service? As we close, I want to tell you a quick story. Really quick, I promise. A man walked into a diner. This isn't the joke either. A man walked into the diner with his newspaper. He found the only booth that was untaken. Untaken? More new words we're learning. He found the only booth in the back corner by the karaoke machine. He loved that karaoke machine. Didn't work though. Too bad. He sat down and he ordered himself, he's a salty man, so he ordered himself a fresh plate of fries. Waitress leaves and he excuses himself to use the restroom. And upon his return, there is a man sitting at his booth. And his first thought is what? Oh, cool. Found a place to sit. The man walks over, sits down. He's a little anxious, so he doesn't make eye contact with the guy. He doesn't like looking at, talking to strangers. He doesn't want to do that. So he sits down. He kind of tried, but they didn't make eye contact. Takes up his paper and he starts reading. And we're all good. He's sitting there. He's in his element of not talking to anyone. And a couple minutes go by, and a fresh plate of salty fries are placed between the two gentlemen. Now, the businessman that's sitting across from him reaches out and grabs a fry. The newspaper man thinks, he must be hungry. So he reaches around, grabs a fry. None of the banter of the businessman is going on in his head, so he doesn't think anything's wrong. Nothing's out of the ordinary. He's just happy to share. Honestly, if this guy needs some fries, he's all for it. Maybe he spent all of his money on the suit he's wearing. Who knows? Goes on, back and forth, this fun little banter, this silent banter. Him take a fry, the other guy takes a fry. He's just like, oh, this is kind of a thrill, I don't get out of the house too much, and this guy's, what's going to happen here? So it gets down to the last fry on the plate, and he thinks, well, this guy must need it, so I'll let him have the last fry. The businessman, sure enough, takes it. A few moments later, the waitress comes by to the businessman. Sorry, sir, for the delay. Here are your fries. and sir, can I take this empty plate out of your way? Yes, please. See the contrast there? Now, it's a parable. It didn't actually happen. It might have happened, but the parable is this. The purpose is this. We can choose whether to be the offended and offensive man, the businessman, or we can be the unoffendable man who doesn't let people just walk all over him, but doesn't allow these small things to interfere, doesn't allow the things to ruin his day. Because that businessman went home, my day is ruined. The guy took some fries, where the newspaper man said, you know what? If he needs it, he's got it. So can I encourage you this morning as we go out today for the remainder of this day, if we can challenge ourselves to live unoffendable. Unoffendable. Do you think you could do that? That we would take these 4 things, that we would keep them all in our minds, and we say, I'm going to make sure everything leads people to Jesus. I'm not going to let it be a trap. I'm going to live unoffendably today, right? Today. Now, if you think that's easy, how about this? How about all week? Okay? And we'll check back later. We'll check back next week when we're all here together. But just challenge yourself. Try it out. Just say, let this become the first stepping stone of a new way of life, of a new way of living, of a new habit, where you value being unoffendable. So, dear Lord, I pray for each and every person who hears my voice today, that, Lord, this would strike up a chord within their hearts, whether they are an offending person, an offensive person, an offended person. Lord, I pray that this is the beginning of a new time, a new era in that person's life, that they look to it and they say, you know what? I'm not going to allow my emotions to govern how I react to these things, to allow me to get so offended by these things. But Lord, I'm going to root myself in your teachings. I'm going to root myself in the Bible, and I'm going to root myself in taking a step back and living unoffendable. Lord, I pray for the strength for each and every person who takes on the challenge today. Live unoffendable. Do not be offended by the little things, but Lord, just realize that offense is a trap, and when we allow it to control us, we are trapped. We cannot move, and we are helpless. And Lord, let everything we do be to bring those around us closer to you. And Lord, for those who are going to be unoffendable all week, I pray for extra strength, that you would fuel them, that you would strengthen them to make this a cornerstone in their life, to make a new stepping stone and a new habit in their life, that each and every day, each and every week, they would live unoffendably. We pray these things in your name. Amen. Amen.